Hello. Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Just paying half attention to the chats, half attention to my crazy nerves doing a live. Pretty rare for me to do this kind of thing, and I'm so happy to see we've got over 100 people already here. What's up, everyone? So I know I was talking originally about doing a cold case conference review. I've also got a couple of other things that I want to bring to your attention, so we're going to kind of do like a mini scratch, and then we're going to get to the cold case conference review, and then we're going to get to the Q&A session. And I also have my awesome associate producer, Christy Arnhart, and full producer of Case Cracked. She is watching the threads there, so if you want to drop questions in, you can go ahead and drop in questions. She's going to take note of some of those questions and get them over to me, because last time I did this, I felt like I was missing some good questions, because I have to kind of pay attention to the content while I'm working the message board at the same time. So it's a lot to keep track of. So big thank you to Christy for helping me out today. So just looking at the chat right now, I'm seeing everyone says, hi, John. Hello to all of you. And I want to know where you guys are from. We've got Ghetto Shamanin from Hamburg, Germany. I've seen Wisconsin. I know we've got someone else in Minnesota that's out there. We've got Kay Burnett from Washington State. Yes, Serene Spoonie, you are live with John Lorden. Thank you for the big heart. Appreciate that. Yes, and Persephone's Pomegranate, thanking Christy for all the hard work she does. Christy is someone that has been helping the channel for a long time, and I am so proud that we grew the channel to the point that we have now, where she is writing episodes of Case Cracked. And she's a co-producer on that. She's become a really big part of my support structure, and I have to thank her every chance I get. Brainerd, Minnesota, Rhode Island, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Illinois, Vancouver, BC, Houston, Texas, Birmingham, Alabama, Louisiana, Kentucky. It's going so fast I can hardly keep up. Munich, Germany, Virginia Beach, Virginia, California, my old stomping grounds, Fort Worth, Texas, Arlington, Texas, Savannah, Georgia, Munster, Germany, India, what's up? Switzerland, wow, Ireland. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, but I was actually conceived in Ireland. We won't get into the details of that story, but I was brought to the U.S. before I was born, so I'm a first-generation American. Indiana, Manchester, England, hello, wow. Thunder Bay, Ontario. What's up to my friends in the North, Canada, Ohio, Nebraska, Virginia, Spain, Sweden. Yes, Alyssa said it right, worldwide. Thank you guys so much for all the support from all over the world. I truly appreciate it. And that's one of the things I'm most proud about is I might not have a rocket ship on YouTube in terms of growth, but the type of people that we've brought together, people that really care about these cases, they come from all over the world, and I just appreciate that we've got the right group of people here. When I started the channel, I was doing a bit more of kind of conspiracy type content and, alien stories and ghost stories. And don't get me wrong, there's a big part of my heart where I like that type of content, but the true crime stuff, once I started moving into that area and talking to family members that were affected with missing loved ones or with family members that had been murdered, it just moved me into a whole different direction of appreciating what I'm doing and focusing on that kind of stuff. So longtime brain scratchers, I know you've seen a bit of a change from where we were at the start to where we are now, but you know, it's a journey, and I don't think we're at the end of it. I think we're somewhere in the middle of it. I'm still working on trying to figure out how to make things better. Everyone's saying hi to Danielle. Is Danielle in here as well? My good co-host on Crime After Crime. Is that what I'm seeing? If you are here, Danielle, thank you so much for joining. That is awesome. Really appreciate it. And Crime After Crime, I can't talk enough about Crime After Crime. It's the show that helps me breathe every month. You know, there's a lot of this work that could be very heavy, and there's just something about it. And it's weird because it's almost kind of an evolution of the relationship that we struck up. Danielle and I originally started talking on Twitter, just kind of reaching out to each other, talking about what we were going through in this YouTube true crime world, and, you know, asking each other for advice on how to do certain things. And from that, Crime After Crime came about. And I still, every time I hit that record button, I'm totally excited to do an episode of Crime After Crime, get to spend such good time with one of my closest friends in this true crime community. But outside of that, we've also got Three Men and a Mystery now. I'm getting quite a bit closer, particularly with Mike Morford and Gray Hughes. Gray and I had kind of a friendship that was developing before that. And I know he's a bit controversial. I've heard from you guys. It's funny because anytime I try to collaborate with anyone else, I hear from a small group of people about why I shouldn't be doing that with that person. Ultimately, my thing is, if we're putting out a good product, if we're helping families, if we're raising exposure, if we're helping you guys maybe be safer, on top of the entertainment factor, of course, those are good partners for me. So everyone I'm working with, I'm really, really happy with. And I don't know. Three Men and a Mystery has really moved me into a whole new area in terms of my investigation skills and reaching out. I'm in contact with people I never really thought I'd be in contact before. The local reporters down there know us. We talk to each other. Oh, Maria Teresa with a big super chat. Thank you so much, Maria. And honestly, I've got something special planned for the super chats today. So those of you that are super chatters, we're going to do something real special together as soon as I get into the content here. But yeah, I love Gray too. I know there are people, and I got to tell you, my thing with Gray is I got to know him through his work primarily outside of YouTube. He's used by real private investigators. He's used by people that are going into court for 3D models, reconstructions, basically trying to get where the logic fits in terms of the measurements of a particular crime scene or an accident scene and things like that. So there's no one like Gray when it comes down to those nitty-gritty details like that. He's great with maps, he's great with measurements, and that's why I knew I had to bring him in for the case of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hollett, a case that is so near and dear to my heart at this point, and I'm thankful that we have a suspect. I'm a little worried just because the case that we're hearing against the suspect doesn't seem very strong, and I think the biggest tragedy in that case could be if they don't get the right person, or if they've got the right person, but they're moving too fast and they blow their chance at getting that conviction. And that's actually going to tie in a little bit to some of the information I'm covering today that I learned at the Cold Case Conference. Danielle S., thank you so much with a big super chat. Really appreciate it. I think you guys are going to be excited when you hear what we're doing with the super chat together. So let's get this thing going. We're going to do first an update on a case. This is the case. We followed it on the channel. I think I've done 4 updates on it at this point. And we now know what the sentence is for Boris Eppskey, the man that seemingly murdered his wife, Karen Eppskey, in 2016. He has been given a 9-year sentence. And it seems like many Victorians are shocked at that. I'm personally shocked at it as well. I have noticed in some cases, in particular where it seems like children get killed, that the sentences don't seem very strong. But in a case like this, they're usually pretty stiff. And I don't know if they're giving him some leniency. I don't know where it's coming from. But this is an article from abc.net.au. Boris Eppskey dumped his wife's body in the bush and has never explained why or how he killed her. He's been given a 9-year sentence for the crime, but he'll be eligible for parole after 6 years behind bars. See, and when I goof words like that, I just edit it right out. And that's why you guys never see that on the regular Brain Scratch. But this is alive. What do you guys think? Is 9 years enough for this? And with parole in 6? I don't know. I don't feel like that's a stiff enough penalty. Yeah, Wicked Gaming is saying only 9 years. What? Rachel, 9 years, that's it? Yes, it is unbelievable. Sam, Nervous Wreck, says 9 years, he must be connected. Possibly. I really don't understand the dynamics of why he would only get 9 years. Yes, it is a slap in the hand. Allison Tapman with a super chat. Thank you so much, Allison. And I do see Danielle's in here. Unbelievable. I'm with you, Danielle. I don't get it. This is a horrible crime. This is a man that didn't come out, and he wasn't very upfront about it at the time. He really put investigators through the ringer on this case. So I don't know how we land at just a 9-year sentence and then give him possible parole in 6 years. On top of that, there was this whole other aspect to this case where his son, who was not her son, her stepson, kept coming out. And this is a guy that's struggling with drug addiction, but he was really pulling for attention in very dark and bizarre ways, saying that things were going on between him and Karen, which it's possible. I'm not here to call him a liar or anything like that, but it was just sad to me that there was this other aspect of someone that he was seemingly doing it just for the attention. I mean, if you were really in a relationship like that where you were going to run away with your stepmother, but then you're going to flip after she's been killed and say that this was abuse of some kind, and it might have started when he was way too young. It's just weird. I get a very weird feeling about his whole aspect on this case, but that's where we're at with it. So a 9-year sentence for Boris. Now, I saw a news story yesterday I wanted to run by you guys because we're looking for a particular man, and you can see him here in the video. Looks like a regular delivery guy, right? See this box that he's holding? He's actually got a crossbow inside the box, and the woman that answers the door gets shot by that crossbow. Over at abcnews.go.com, manhunt underway for fake delivery man who shot woman with crossbow. So I really wanted to get this picture out. It's part of the reason why I wanted to drop it into today's live stream. So take a good look at this guy. I got to tell you right off the bat, I'm feeling weird about the hair. I think it's pretty highly likely that is a bad wig that he's wearing underneath the ball cap, but he's got some shoes that might be identifiable. The clothing, it looks to me like he went to a hardware store and bought some type of paint coveralls, which is a pretty good way to disguise yourself if you're going to do something like this. The way that he's holding the box is strange, and I think he's having to do that because he basically has a hole on the backside of the box. You can see this arm is basically going into the hole, and that's what's holding the actual crossbow. This film is edited. It will not show the shot, but you can see him running away there as well after it happens, and the door closes quickly. The video released Monday showed a masked man approaching the 44-year-old woman's home near Toronto with a large cardboard box in his hand and a hidden crossbow. He rang the doorbell, chatted with the woman for a few moments, and fired an arrow into her chest, leaving her with life-threatening injuries. The Peel Regional Police are investigating an attack. This happened in November of 2018, but it seems like they've been having trouble finding him, so now they're putting this video out. He ran and fled the scene in a vehicle parked nearby. He's still on the run. This is the type of crossbow they're thinking was likely used there. Comments that were made to the victim by the suspect indicate that the victim was targeted and that the suspect may have carried out the attack at the request of another individual. This was not a random act. So those comments are almost making it sound like possible murder for hire type situation. I don't know if the investigation has shown any enemies in this woman's life that could give them some leads in terms of who to investigate. But one of the tough things about following this story, even in the media, is they're not releasing her name. Obviously, this guy's still out there somewhere. So I don't even know how I'm going to keep up to date on this story. So if you guys have updates on that, please send them my way on the Twitter account at LordanArts. The woman spent several months in the hospital and will be in a recovery phase for the rest of her life. Apparently, the arrow hit several major organs and has really given her some trouble in terms of recovery. So what's going on with this guy? This is a guy we're looking for in the Ontario area, and I'm hoping that someone out there can help. All right, so there's a case that is near and dear to my heart. I'm sure you guys have heard about the Colin Madsen case. I've covered it here on the channel. His mother, Dana, and I have been in close contact ever since I did that coverage. She needed help putting together a video for a GoFundMe, and I helped her with that. There is also a documentary that is being worked on, and it is called Colin. Well, now this is interesting. I checked this earlier and I thought they actually had more money. That's better. They're looking to raise funds to complete the post-production and to help them promote this documentary. Essentially, it's one thing to make a documentary. If you don't have a way to distribute it, you have to get it into film festivals so that people will see it, people will talk about it, and then potentially you can get some distribution out of that. So that's the plan that's going on with this documentary. Dana did work with them on this documentary. She's interviewed for it as well. They were also kind enough that I saw a trailer for it that was kind of on the hush-hush, and we asked them if it would be okay if Dana released that on the petition website, just once again to raise exposure to what has happened with Colin. And as a matter of fact, Dana sent me a card personally, which I keep right here near my desk. There we go. And this card actually has a few pictures of Colin in it to just kind of help remind us all what we're missing out on. This was a really special individual that I think he already brought a lot to this world in his short life, but he could have done so much more. So this Kickstarter is on a time frame. I think it's only active, for another 36 hours. They are still, looks like, just over $1,500 shy of making this all work. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Super chats today are going directly towards this documentary, but this is an all or nothing funding project. So basically, if they don't hit that $3,500 goal, none of the money is going to get pulled in. If that does happen, then the super chat, basically the money that I make in super chats, because YouTube takes a certain percentage, I think it's 30, but I've heard it could be as much as 50. So I'm just going to say 50% of the super chats that happen today will be donated to either this documentary, or if this closes because they don't hit their goal, I'm going to kick it over to the GoFundMe that is going directly to the legal costs for continuing to prosecute this case in Russia. And the case has been reopened. As a matter of fact, Dana sent out an update on this that she has sent the first payment from funds raised in this GoFundMe to the legal team. So this GoFundMe is really helping. So one way or the other, super chats, you guys are helping me continue to help Dana in the case of what's going on with Colin. And I can see there's some other super chats in here. I want to give a big thank you to Corpus Christine, Chris Marie. Thank you so much, Chris. Big friend of the channel. Raquel Fraser. Thank you so much. And I think that catches me up on super chats. So know that for the rest of this episode, your super chat money, half of it's going directly to one of these causes. The other, up to the other half, could be going to YouTube. I don't know. If there's anything left over, that'll continue to help support the channel here. On top of that, I want to remind you there is a petition that is open for this. So if you haven't signed it yet, please consider signing it. You can go to change.org, just do a search for Colin Madsen. That should bring you to the petition. It's been signed by over 115,000 people worldwide. So this could be a very big message. And I don't know, this might have even helped in terms of the investigation being reopened at this point. I don't know why the Russian authorities would decide to all of a sudden reopen this investigation. So who knows? All pressure is good in cases like this, and we don't know what the trigger is, but thankfully that case has been reopened. All right, so let's do just a couple questions real quick before we jump into the review of the Cold Case Conference. Question, do you know if any tips from viewers of the show have directly led to a break in a case? Also, thank you for this amazing channel, Kaylee Wren. This actually came up at the Cold Case Conference. We do know that one case in particular, we had a missing persons case that was opened. It was a few years ago. I think it was Vicky Gatlin, if I remember correctly. And I did an episode, I released it about her. And then I started hearing from you guys that, hey, John, we think that she's still active. We're finding some social media that seems like it's from after the time that she was actually missing. So I reached out to the police department that had the missing persons case, and I asked, is this still open? Is she still missing? They told me, yes, it was still an open case. And I said, well, I've got some information for you. We collected together a bunch of the social media posts that you guys had found. We shot them over to the police department. A couple weeks went by, and then I got an email from them basically thanking us for that, and the case had been closed out. On top of that, there's been tips that we've called in. There's been all kinds of different ones. I can't really tell you guys about some of the stuff there because it's information that's still being worked on. But I could just say we've been thanked by police departments. We've been thanked by the FBI. I've been thanked by numerous people that tell me that they can't tell me how or why, but that a specific episode has helped in a particular case. In some cases, they're talking like they might be related to law enforcement, possibly working for it themselves, or they're family members that have heard something from law enforcement. And I don't know that law enforcement is always the quickest to go thanking someone else for nudges on cases. I mean, we're still wondering with 3 Men and a Mystery if we helped push the DNA testing there or if it happened before us. Now, it's a bit hard to understand. And quite honestly, ultimately, the main thing I care about is that the DNA testing happened. But originally, the police chief said that the DNA that he contacted Parabon at the start of fall. Then we released an episode and said, hey, we've been reaching out to these guys since September, specifically talking to them about Parabon because we were going to offer to pay for it. And most recently, he was on the stand at the one court date that has happened so far. And now he's saying that he actually reached out to Parabon in August. So this time frame keeps moving. I don't know. Could we have helped there? Possibly. Maybe he was already on the track for that. I don't know. So it's one of those things where the best thing we can do is raise awareness. We can hope that the awareness that we're raising is affecting these things. I know in cases of other shows that has certainly happened. I know in a few cases with my channel that it has happened also. So kind of the best answer I can give you at this point. SwimFan33 asks if you ever plan on doing any more vlogs. I don't know. The vlogging stuff wasn't as popular as the kind of more finished content that I put out. Even these lives, I don't know, we'll have to see how this one does, but it seems that the audience out there likes Searchlight, they like Brain Scratch, they like that kind of polished, finished content coming their way. And I know there's channels that help in all kinds of other ways, you know, like Gray. I mean, he does live streams that are hours and hours long, and he's got viewers that are watching those as well. So I think it's just, I really try to listen to you guys in terms of the numbers that I see about what shows work and what shows don't. And that's why Itchy Mysteries has gone away. It worked okay, and it's made some good connections for me in terms of filmmakers. There's a case that I'm currently looking into that I'm hoping, actually I have a meeting later today with some filmmakers about it. I'm hoping we could raise more exposure to that case. So I don't know if I will get back to the kind of more freeform vlogs that I did before. I can't see myself coming on this channel and talking about my favorite comic book or something like that. And that used to be what this channel started as. I totally get that. But I think the audience has grown based on the more serious content that I do, and I'm going to keep going that way about it. I have some more super chats I want to thank really quickly. I'm just trying to see if there's a better way for me to see them. Here we go. So we got Chris Marie, Corpus Christine, Renee Goldman, thank you so much. Nervous Wreck, thank you. H22A25, thank you. Ruby Jinx and Trace Elements, thank you so much. I really appreciate your guys' help with this, and we're going to see if we can help that documentary go and get funded properly so that they can do what they need to do with raising awareness on Colin's case. All right, so let's take a look. Beck J says a longer conspiracy type video once a month would be epic. I have been trying to roll in what I consider classic brain scratches once a month. Sometimes I just can't find the right type of content and I go for a true crime story, but I am trying to do that. It's just a matter of my list of suggestions from you guys has been very clearly focused on true crime for so long that I really have to dig quite a bit to get into one of the old classic brain scratch areas. So it's, and it's weird because I want the suggestions to come from you. I want you guys to be able to tell me, hey, John, this is the type of content we want to see. I've got this particular case that I feel very passionate about. The start of the conversation that way really motivates me, particularly if it's a family member or a friend of the family's, and they're just like, hey, this family's really hurting. I'd love to get more exposure to this case. It's hard for me to say no in those instances. And right now, on my list of brain scratch suggestions, I'll let you guys know the exact number. Let's talk about some numbers here real quick. I am at 244 cases that have been suggested for brain scratch. Unfortunately, it's even a higher number for Searchlight. I'm currently at 331 cases that have been suggested for Searchlight. And all of these cases are important. All of these cases deserve it. For Searchlight cases in particular, I try to focus on ones that have less coverage going for them. And most of the time, I'll even do a search on YouTube to see, has one of my contemporaries done a video on this already? If Danielle has put out a video on this case 2 months ago, I'm probably not going to do that particular case because I've got such a big list that I know there's other cases in there that need the attention. I've got a list of, I'd guess, 10 to 12 different YouTubers that I kind of keep an eye on, and I try to not intentionally double cover cases that they have covered. Or I'll make a note in my Excel sheet about it, and I'll say, okay, Danielle covered this in March. And if I see that a year later and that case is still open and active and there's some new information, I'll probably go ahead and make a video about it at that point. So there is this whole kind of management aspect when it comes to making sure that I'm picking the right cases for the channel here and trying to help as many people as we can. Ultimately, that is the biggest goal of my work here. That's what keeps me going with all this stuff. Let me just check if we've got any more. Let's see. Girl Talk asks, John, are you in the works of a TV show coming soon? I wouldn't say I'm in the works. I would say that I have been spoken to about some form of television project at length previously with an Elisa Lam-based project. That seems to have fallen to the wayside, basically because we can't get any connection to family members, and we need someone to kind of be the heart of that type of project. But about twice a year, I have some form of contact from a production company or something. The last time it happened was literally about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I had a meeting with them as well. And it always boils down to trying to figure out what we could do with this format in terms of moving it into a television type format, because this is almost like a news show, the way it's done here. And most of the true crime content you see, there's like recreations and there's people out in the field, and I would love to do that type of show, but I'm also not going to sacrifice what I have going on here. I mean, we're helping 2 cases every single week. We're covering a missing person, and we're usually covering an unsolved murder of some kind. And for me to stop doing that, it would have to be for the right reason. I would have to have some form of significant, hey, John, we're going to help this particular case, but we're going to need your focused attention for a couple weeks while we send you to these locations and have you do these interviews or whatever it is. So something like that coming up, I think is a strong possibility. Will it be a television project as opposed to a film project? I don't know, because like I said, later today I've got a meeting with some filmmakers about a potential project. So let me make sure I'm keeping up with everyone. I think I thanked Maria Teresa already. And let's see. The Erie Fairy asks if we can get a total of all the donations at the end of the live stream. I would love to do that. I think I'll be able to give you kind of a rough estimate based on a window that I have open that only shows me the super chats. So I will try to remember to do that. Eve asks, if you could choose one unsolved case or mystery to have solved, which case would you choose? That is a really tough question to ask, because there's a piece of me, once I do a deep dive for an episode, it's like there's a piece of my heart that goes out to that, and I get attached to that. And I don't know that it'd be fair almost for me to pick one and say this one's more important than the others, but I know there are some that come up in my mind more often. As a matter of fact, I think we are just past the anniversary for the Missy Beavers case, and that is one that just drives me nuts. It's a case where we've got footage of the perpetrator, and admittedly, they're dressed up like an officer or like a SWAT team member, and they're pretty well covered up. But it just breaks my heart that we haven't seen a break in that case. Is it someone that is related to her, that is part of her extended family? Is it someone outside of that? Is it a stalker of some kind? The thing that really bothers me about that case is it really boils down to kind of a smaller pool of suspects, at least from the way I'm viewing it. And the fact that we can't turn that into any viable leads or a big announcement that, hey, we've named a suspect, really breaks my heart. Also because you got children here, and their mother was taken off this planet. And I don't know, there's nothing good about that situation. So Missy Beavers, kind of always on my mind. Colin Madsen on my mind. Lately, the Elisa Gomez case has really touched me. I actually met with Elisa's mother and sister. They kind of brought me into the files that they have and the footage that they have and the pictures that they have. So I've been kind of moved into a whole different level with that particular case. So I'm trying to see if there's something I can do to help more with that case as well. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that keep me wondering and working to try to help them move forward. All right. So I'm going to get into the notes now. Cold case conference. First of all, getting there. Big challenge getting there, because I left on Sunday, the same day that Chicago Airport canceled 600 flights. My original flight there was supposed to leave at noon, if I recall correctly. So I got at the airport around 10. Then I saw that flight got delayed 20 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And I had a connection flight that I had to make in Newark to get to Albany, New York. So I kept going up to the desk and I'm like, am I going to make this connecting flight? And they're like, well, the plane that feeds that flight is also stuck in Chicago. So theoretically, that one should be just as late as ours. So you'll probably make it. At one point, it got even later, and I was like, hey, I'm checking the status on that other flight, and they're not showing the same delay as you are here. So there's no way I'm going to make this connection. Thankfully, they sent me to a completely different airline that had a flight direct to Albany, but it wasn't until 8:30 that night. So I was at the airport, I guess, about 10 hours. And I don't mind being at airports, but man, 10 hours is a lot of time to spend at an airport. I mean, to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the same airport in particular, not very fun. So I got out there much later than I thought. I didn't arrive to my hotel room until I think 12:30 after midnight. And I was pretty wiped out because I had to get up early the next morning to get to the conference and be a part of all this. But I did go. I was able to sit in for at least half of the first day, and I want to share with you guys a bit of what I learned. So Joe Kennedy was the first person after they opened the conference. Ken Maines actually spoke before Joe, but Joe was the first official speaker. This is a man that has 25 years as an NCIS agent, and he threw a lot of good data at me, so I took good notes on that. He says there's currently 280,000 unsolved cold cases in the U.S. That is a lot. 17,000 murders happened last year, but the peak was in 1993, and I believe he said there was about 23,000 murders that happened in that one particular year. So seems like violent crime has actually been on a bit of a decline. The problem with any number of murders is the resolution rate for these murders has also been on a decline. The resolution rate currently is about 59%. So, and we've been seeing that slide basically kind of year over year. It keeps getting less and less that we're actually able to take one of these murder cases and, get a conviction out of it. Now, specifically for cold cases, out of 100 cold cases, only 20 will ever have charges filed. And of those, only one will result in a conviction. So this is something that already kind of worries me, particularly when I'm thinking about JB and Tracy's case, because we've already got pretty steep numbers here just to even get it to the point that charges have been filed. But then the stats here speak for themselves. Only 1 in 20 is actually going to come through with a conviction. And with what I'm seeing with the case that they're making against Coley McCraney so far, it's basically hinging on him, his semen being found on JB, and the fact that when they interviewed him, he said that he didn't know the girls. And sure, is that incriminating? Yes. Does it leave enough room for people to have reasonable doubt? I think so, particularly if he comes back later and says something like, I didn't want to talk about it because I'm with the same woman now that I was at that time, and now she's my wife and we have kids together. And so that's where I'm a little worried. They have a DNA match, yes, but not to a murder weapon. Murder weapon still hasn't been located as far as we know, at least with what's been presented in court so far. But to hear these numbers, to go from out of 100 cold cases, only 20 have charges filed, and only one of those will result in a conviction. It is a very steep uphill climb that these cases go through, and that is certainly one of those cases. So I sincerely hope they get to the peak if they've got the right guy. Physical evidence solves 15 to 20% of those cases, and typically the sweet spot for solving cold cases is in the 8 to 14 year range. So once again, with JB and Tracy's case, we're looking at a case that is 20 years old this year at the end of July. He also noted we're putting too much emphasis on DNA, and he thought that it was dangerous that we were doing that. That's another thing that's got me kind of concerned with the JB and Tracy case. We have an interview that's going to be coming out soon on 3 Men and a Mystery with the CEO of Parabon. It's also got the creator of GEDmatch and a genetic genealogist. And they're all fairly clear that those tools are really not to solve cases. Those tools are to give police a new viable suspect. And then it's up to police to use the same traditional methods that they always have for actually solving the case. And I think right now, in particular, because of what's happened with Parabon over the past year and the big cases that it has helped solve, I think people aren't really understanding that they're only giving you a piece of the puzzle, and it's up to good old-fashioned detective work to make the rest of that puzzle come together. So I get what he's saying there. Outside of that, there have been cases of contamination with DNA. The better they're getting at picking up DNA, the more that transference becomes an issue. There's even a story. I think I should do a case cracked on it. Maybe I have. Sometimes I research stuff and I'm like, did I do an episode on that? There's a story about what everyone thought was a mass murderer because it kept finding the same DNA all over the place. And then all of a sudden they were finding samples of it internationally. They're like, what's going on? They traced it back to someone that worked at the swab factory. Basically, there was contamination happening at the swab factory. So DNA certainly not perfect, and it still needs to be kind of checked and rechecked. And then hopefully you find the physical evidence to make the DNA match make sense. And that's what I'm wondering in particular with the case we're covering on 3 Men and a Mystery. He also told us 1/3 of murderers go back to check on the bodies. Really interesting information. And he was actually a big proponent for podcasts at this point. He said that previously he didn't understand what podcasts were for, hardly knew how to get to one or what it was. But they had done a podcast for a case that he was looking at in particular, and they have found it extremely helpful. They were amazed that the podcaster was able to get some of the interviews that they were able to get. And he even kind of pointed out that podcasters can sometimes do things that the police can't really do. So pretty interesting to hear support for podcasts in that way. After him was Dr. Lee Malore, who had one of the most graphic presentations. He was talking about behavior manifestations of sexual sadism and necrophilia in homicide investigations. Let me just point out at this point that the association, the AISOCC, basically who was hosting the cold case conference, this conference is not for casual true crime fans. This is for people that want to really dig in. And in particular, they're trying to bring together investigators and give investigators better resources. So that's why you had people like, Dr. Henry Lee that were presenting there. And this was one of those types of presentations where it was just extremely detailed. There was a lot of pictures that once you see them, you can't unsee them. The subject matter, extremely dark, but gives you a much better insight into some of the psychology that's going on with people that conduct those types of crimes in particular. For certain people, it might give you nightmares. For me, I appreciated the aspect of now being able to understand intent and motivation for someone that I'm not very much like. And you guys have probably heard me say it on the show several times before. I'm always looking for the intent when it comes to the episodes, and when I'm trying to figure out what someone has done. What was their intent? Why did they do this? Why did they take that particular vehicle to that particular spot? Why did they talk to this particular person? Even when we were covering the little mini scratch that we did today, why is that guy at that door with that box? What's the motivation? What's the intent there? Dr. Henry Lee then presented, and for me personally, Henry Lee, if you've watched The Staircase, you've seen him. If you watch the OJ trial, you've seen him. Very experienced forensic pathologist, and an incredibly good speaker. Just a really, really good speaker. And he even dropped in elements of comedy. Just a joke would kind of pop in here or there that didn't feel completely out of place. It was really refreshing, especially after how heavy the previous presenter was. But he also made some really good points. He was very honest about the fact that not every cold case can be solved, and that a large part of that really depends on how much evidence was originally collected at the scene. And several of them talked about the fact that scenes are treated completely different now than they were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They were like, it was a mess. No one's wearing gloves. No one's wearing booties. People are walking all over everything. Thankfully, since DNA has come around, investigators are getting way more cautious as they're processing scenes. But apparently before that, it was a whole different story. And he also had a big reminder that when you're reviewing documents, to remember that you're seeing the crime scene through the eyes of someone else. And he went as far as saying, even if you're reading an autopsy report, don't just take everything that it says at face value. For him, someone in his position, they're able to go and in some cases retest samples and really drive into different understanding that might not line up with the narrative that was written on that particular document. So just really good kind of frame of mind to really help investigators remember that not everyone's perfect and you are looking at it through the lens of someone else. Of course, the next morning, Aphrodite Jones presented, and she was actually talking about the Michael Peterson, the staircase case, the Kathleen Peterson death. And she was very charged, I would say. I was kind of surprised because I've seen True Crime, a few episodes of True Crime that she hosts. It's a show of hers, and I liked her approach in those shows. I like that she gets real, and you can tell that she's feeling what the person she's talking to is feeling. Like she's really open to their feelings. But here, I don't know, she just came off really aggressive and really closed off. She had a very particular point of view that she wanted to point out about the staircase, and that's that she thinks Michael Peterson is guilty. And she presented some information to support that, but she also presented a lot of very strong emotion to try to support that. So it was kind of interesting. But after Aphrodite was when we had our big presentation, and that was with Tim and Lance from Crawlspace, Mike Morford, and myself. And this is going to be available on Crawlspace. They actually recorded it, so it will be coming out very soon. You can hear it for yourselves. Some of the stuff that we talked about, the overall talk was about the role of true crime podcasts in the investigation of cold cases. And we talked about helping families. We talked about raising exposure. I did this kind of blurb about television versus social media formats and how one might be more helpful over the other. Podcasts you can listen to anywhere. You can just consume them in a whole different way. YouTube, number 2 search engine. If people are looking for a particular case, they're very likely to go there. So we kind of hit on all those points. We talked about relating that we're fostering audiences that care about these cases, like all of you guys out there, developing communities that want to help these cases, like we're doing today with these super chats. We talked about fundraising. I even brought up in particular the fundraising that Gray Hughes has done recently, where he was looking to get a John Doe identified, and that has turned into a much bigger thing now because he basically raised enough money to identify more than one, and he got in contact with an organization that's going to help him do that. So we talked about how we can help law enforcement with our shows and platforms, and that kind of led to a little side conversation that I think is really important. We'll get to. We also had an open Q&A there that the audience was very engaged in. And following us was Dr. Cyril Wecht. I'm sure you've heard his name before. Very big forensic pathologist. He spoke for about 90 minutes. They had a survivor of a Ted Bundy attack named Kathy Kleiner that also spoke. So there was, I mean, if you are kind of a true crime fan as opposed to someone that would consider yourself a professional working in here, there was certain presentations I think that would appeal to you. They also talked about the D.B. Cooper case. They talked about the Madson family and even the disappearance of Amelia Earhart. So, you know, I think that many of you out there would probably appreciate most of the presentations. A few of them might be a little too deep divey for you, but there was other aspects that were a bit lighter. Now, the most important conversation that I think happened actually happened at dinner after the first night when I was talking to Morph and a prosecutor, and we were kind of trying to figure out how do you get law enforcement to the right shows. And I'm even having this happen nowadays where people will reach out to me and they're like, John, I need help. My family had this particular thing happen. And I'll take a look and I'll say, well, there's not quite enough media for me to do that on Brain Scratch, but if you have a family member that's willing to talk, I know this other show, you know, that Morph does, The Murder in My Family, maybe I can get you over there. On some occasion, people come to me after I do coverage and they're like, hey, John, we love that you did the YouTube piece, but is there a podcast that we could reach out to? And if it's a missing persons case, I'll reach out to Marissa over at The Vanished. So there's already this kind of exchange happening in our community where cases are kind of being passed to the appropriate channels. So one of the biggest conversations that I was having that I think is most important there is, how do we make some kind of system for law enforcement who knows nothing about this space? And we don't want them to spend time listening to podcasts trying to figure out what's the right one for them. How do we make some kind of intake system that routes them to the right show? You know, can we have a web form somewhere where they fill out some of the details of the case, what type of case it is, maybe where it takes place, what type of coverage they're looking for, if they think they need YouTube or they think they need a podcast, and then some kind of system automatically spits out an email that comes to me and says, hey, John, you know, this particular investigator needs help on this particular case. They're willing to share some of this information with you. So that's probably the most important conversation I ran into. We talked about it a lot through those 2 days. I even brought it up a little bit in the presentation as well. And I'll bring it up to all of you guys too. I'm just looking for good ideas when it comes to how we can route law enforcement to the right shows. And if you have some input on that, please feel free to reach out to me. As usual, you can get me on Twitter at LordanArts, or you can send an email to john@LordanArts.com. So all in all, that was the Cold Case Conference. Really enjoyed it. I'm so thankful to have been part of it. It was kind of a personal goal of mine to do a presentation of some kind this year, and I can check that off the list. It's pretty funny because I was way less nervous to do that than I am to come on live with you guys for some reason, but maybe that's just me. Over to catch up on the super chats real quick. Let's see here. Emma Waugh, thank you so much. Julia Oliver, thank you. Rachel S. Victor Unguise, Irene Vasquez, Diamond Remley 39, Persephone's Pomegranate. Hope I'm saying that right. It wouldn't be an episode of Brain Scratch or anything on my channel if I didn't get a name wrong. Audra Blankenship, Amy Lord, Crystalline, hey Crystalline, and Francine Genova. Thank you guys so much. Man, I don't know if I'm going to be able to even add this stuff up. It's kind of crazy, but I'll do a rough estimate on it at some point. All right, let's get back to your questions. Let's see here. So Christy's been keeping an eye, capturing some questions from all of you. I'm going to take another sip because my voice is getting a little cracky. Well, Christy herself wants to know, I have a question if the case cracked list is long also. I don't think I would consider it unhealthy. Right now, I'd say it's probably at about 120 cases that I still haven't looked into for a case cracked. So not quite as long as Searchlight or Brain Scratch, but certainly healthy. And that's enough cases for 3 more years of case cracked. So I don't think we're running out anytime soon, Christy. Let's see. Eve asks, oh, we've already done that one. Drea Power asks, do you think you'd ever do a multi-episode deep dive into a case and its minute details as you did with Elisa Lam? Essentially, that is what 3 Men and a Mystery is. I felt that also. I felt going into this year that I wanted to take on a deep dive format of some kind, and I felt like I needed help with it. And it's been great to work with 2 other partners on that we each kind of have different specialties. You know, I'm a bit of the more organized information gatherer. We've got Morph, who is great at reaching out to people, getting good interviews. We've got Gray, that's really the detailed analysis type guy. So that is what 3 Men and a Mystery is. And it's, you know, it's really time consuming, and taking on cases that way is a whole different thing. I also feel that there's a more rewarding aspect to it. But I can't really see myself doing that on the regular channel. With the regular channel, I'm trying to help as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So not to say that I'm doing just quick hits and then I'm off and, you know, forget about your case. That's certainly not what happens, because typically after I put out a video, it's very common now that I'm hearing from a family member and we're continuing conversation after that about that particular case. And some cases do warrant follow-up episodes. But I do see that as very different from doing a deep dive. Basically, what I do here on the channel, I consider more media review of cases. And what we're doing with 3 Men is literally an investigation. We're doing our own investigation there. We're doing the media review aspect as well, almost as a starting point to it. But we've done a lot of reaching out. We've talked to people behind the scenes. We've got a lot of additional information that has come out through a traditional investigative process. So, I don't know how much more I could take on at this point. I'm happy that I kind of worked my schedule to be able to do what I'm doing now. But I got to tell you, some of the past couple of weeks has been a little nerve-wracking, especially when we decided that we had to start releasing the episodes earlier. That kind of threw our whole schedule into this wacky place and kind of created a bunch of extra work for me. So I'm trying to keep that balance, keep myself healthy in all this, because ultimately, you know, if I decide that I can't take this on anymore, I feel like there's a bunch of people that I'm going to be letting down in terms of the coverage that I'm doing here on the channel. So I've always got my eye on that, particularly with what we saw happen with Kaylee Elise this year. You know, we lost a good one. We lost someone that really did great research, had a good, healthy audience, and was helping people with her coverage of these cases. So, you know, Danielle and I talk about this pretty regularly. We're really trying to make sure that we keep each other in check, that the mental game is being taken care of as well. It's such an important aspect. I do see YouTubers just burn out all over the place, and I don't want that to happen. I've been very thankful that I've been able to keep that balance, and Christy is a big part of helping me with that also. Let's see. Haley Peach asks, what's the best way to get suggestions to you? Honestly, I still think Twitter is the best way, at LordanArts. I don't think I ever miss a tweet. If I do, it's pretty rare. If I'm traveling or something, it's hard for me to keep up with all of the different message places. So that's the one time where it's probably riskiest. But outside of that, Twitter is by far the best and easiest way to get a case suggestion to me. Outside of that, people are using the forums. If you go to LordanArts.com, there's a form at the very bottom of that. Fill out that form, hit submit. All of those get reviewed as well. So those, I would say, are the 2 best bets. My email box, it's a mess. It's kind of a free-flowing thing. So it's not quite as controlled and neat as getting to me through Twitter or using the comment box at the bottom of LordanArts.com. I think the DNA transfer case was talked about on the podcast with Danielle Hallen. It might be. And I've talked about it with some other people as well. Amy Lord asks if there is a formula that you use to set yourself apart from everyone else. These true crime shows are a dime a dozen. I like how you stay true to yourself and you really seem to care about families. Well, thank you so much, Amy. And I don't know that it's a formula. I was really happy at one point. There was a slide that was up at the Cold Case Conference, and it was during Dr. Henry Lee's talk. And it showed what a typical investigation process is. And there was this section right in the middle where he was talking about that you have to collect data, and then you're analyzing that data to come to your conclusions, and then you kind of test those conclusions after that. So I think what I see a lot of in true crime content is people that are trying to get you to that very last step. They essentially, they want to do all the research. They want to pull together the story. They want to get the story right for themselves and then bring you to some type of conclusion. Quite honestly, that's even part of the challenge that I have when I'm talking to like TV execs and stuff. They're like, well, how does this episode end? What can we do at the end of the episode to make it feel like there's some kind of conclusion? So a lot of true crime content is molded in that way. And I think we're different because I'm taking you guys to that middle section. I'm not trying to drive my conclusions. I know, I struggle with this. Everyone has personal biases, and at some point, some of those come through in some of my episodes. But you still can challenge those because we're going through the content together. You're seeing that I'm reviewing a news article, and maybe you consider ABC News to be a better source than a blog that I'm relating information from right after that. So you're basically in that research process with me. And that's a very different place from a finished piece where you're not being shown those sources. You don't know where the story elements are all coming from. Someone is just giving you a narrative of what the story is. So that's my difference. I'm happy to see that I'm part of Dr. Henry Lee's real investigative chain or arc, and I'm happy to focus on that particular spot. I don't want to tell you guys what to think. I want to tell you guys what I've found, and I want there to be a conversation that comes after that. The biggest differentiator for YouTube and podcasts is you. And it's not that I know you guys listen to podcasts too, but there's a conversation that happens based off that video in the comments down below. And I can't tell you how many times I've had family members reach out to me and they're like, thank you so much for putting out this video because I'm learning so much about what people think about this case from the comments. Or I've got whole new aspects I never thought about because of your video, but also because of things that happened in the comments. So YouTube's real strength, I've always thought this, we're not trying to be TV here. And I think that's another part of the reason why TV has trouble trying to figure out what to do with me. We're trying to start a conversation. I am just the starting point for the conversation. You guys continue it. And then occasionally I'll see what you guys are talking about and I'll say, you know what? That point needs to be brought back up. Let's start that as a new chain of a new conversation. That's the biggest differentiator to all this. So you guys are a huge part of it. Drea Power asks, will 3 Men and a Mystery cover other cases in a new season? Yes. As long as it remains successful. If by the end of this first season, everything trails off and no one cares about the show anymore, I don't know. I haven't talked to the guys about a scenario like that. The episodes have been pretty strong on my video views. They seem to be tapering off a little bit, but I think on the audio listens, they're holding steady or even getting a little stronger, which I kind of saw with Crime After Crime as well. So the intent at this point is, yes, we're going to clean up or finish up the JB and Tracy case. I don't know what's going to happen with that one because I don't think the court dates are going to happen anytime soon. Right now, it's going to grand jury. Then the grand jury is going to decide, is this something that they can go ahead and prosecute? Then it's going to kick back to scheduling for a court date, and they're going to have pretrial motions. I mean, it could be like 2 to 3 years before the actual trial even kicks off there. So I don't even know what the end point is, except we're running episodes right up to the actual 20th anniversary. We're going to do a special live stream over on Gray's channel on the 20th anniversary. And that might be the end of season 1 at that point. We'll probably take a little bit of a break because we do need to kind of restart the investigative process, pick the new case, start reaching out to people. That process, we started 3 Men and a Mystery back in September. So it's a bit of an uptake on that process, but we will get to other cases. I'm feeling fairly strong about that. Would you do one-off episodes with experts on certain cases, such as Mike Morford? I'd love to see you both look into the Riverside murders, tenuously linked to the Zodiac. Yes, one-off case type episodes. Well, we've kind of got one coming up. I've been talking to Sheila Wysocki. She's ready to come back on the channel. You know, we did cover the Lauren Agee case here, and we kind of left it with this cliffhanger of the triangle. You know, I want to figure out this triangle that was left on this girl's body. Where did that come from? Sheila's ready to talk about that. So Sheila and Gray are coming on to Brain Scratch, and we're going to go over that within the next few weeks. That'll be happening. But that's kind of a continuation, but we're always open to doing things like this, especially now that I'm kind of growing my true crime community. I've got more friends in this area. It's easier for us to kind of line this stuff up and talk about new cases. Danielle asks, which of the recent cases from this year were the most difficult to cover? I don't know that I would say they're difficult to cover. The Elisa Gomez case was difficult because I was dealing with somewhat limited information. I had it handed directly to me, and it included notes from her mother about her mother's point of view and some of the questions that she had, and then to go and meet with them, to sit with them, to look through the materials, to see photos of Elisa's body, to see footage of the crime scene when the police first show up from the body cams, to see footage of Elisa still alive earlier that night from security cameras that were at the bar that they were hanging out at. That stuff's pretty tough. And I'll tell you guys, the hardest aspect of it is just, how do I help these people? How do I help them? They have all this information, and I want to do more with that. I want to do more for them. And I think that's a big part of the reason why I lined up this phone call that I have later today with these filmmakers, just to see if there's some other way to raise exposure to this case, some other way to try to get police to maybe rethink this one a little bit, or to release the materials to a different agency that'll maybe pick it up. Is there anything I can do to help these people that are stuck in the pain? I mean, it's one thing to lose your daughter, to lose your sister. It's another thing to have that happen and you feel like the world has turned its back on you. And the person that's responsible is running around free, thrashed her house. I've seen new pictures of the house. I've literally seen the painting on the wall that says "Till Death Do Us Party." I've seen a incredibly bad etching that's even to the left of that. I won't even tell you guys what that says. The house was completely thrashed. The guy drove off in her car. He emptied her bank account the day after. There is so much injustice in this case that's the hardest thing about it. How do you help the family cope with that? And how do you help them try to find some steps forward? So that's, I guess if there's another deep dive case that is coming up, it's that one. I just don't know where it's going to go from here. I don't know if it's going to be a documentary. I don't know if I'm going to be coming back to you guys saying, hey, we need to do more live streams, and I've got a Kickstarter now because we need money for this documentary so we can get this thing made. I don't know. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I have a good meeting this afternoon. Let's see. Indigenous Insights, what's up? Thank you guys for joining. Asks, do you do any FOIA requests to get accurate info when there's conflicting news reports? FOIA requests, and I heard even more about this at the Cold Case Conference. In general, they don't do a lot of help for the type of coverage that I'm doing. Because like I said, I am doing the media review version of the story. For a deep dive investigation, are FOIA requests worth trying? Yes, but if you're working something that is considered an active case, it's highly likely that you're not going to get anything back. In some cases, you might get some information back, but it could be heavily redacted. I've heard for the first time from a family member who had his sister murdered. He actually filed a FOIA request, and he kind of accidentally got way more information than he should have. And I practically never hear about that scenario. So it's really making me think twice about FOIA requests at this point. For deep dive cases, I do think it's something that we will be doing more of going forward. I did try it originally, like when I was looking into the Elisa Lam stuff. It was just like a giant brick wall, and that wasn't even an open investigation at that point. It kind of depends on the departments you're dealing with. I've heard LAPD is basically just notorious for not responding to any FOIA requests. But let's see here. Haley Peach asks, are there any cases you read or research about that you don't do a video on? Yes, quite frequently. Essentially what'll happen is sometimes I'll start looking into a case, and either the information will kind of peter out. Like I could have 12 different websites open, because basically when I start looking at a case, I'm doing new searches and I'm just opening every single link I can. But then I'll start reading through them and I'm like, oh, they're all just repeating the same 3 points of information. And by the time I get to the end of that chain, I'm like, this is going to be like a 5-minute episode. I can't do this. On the flip side, occasionally they'll take a turn where it just won't feel right. Like, I'll start looking into a Searchlight case and I'll figure out halfway towards the end of it that, oh my God, they're considering this a murder investigation at this point. So is this really a Searchlight? Sometimes I'll bump those over to Brain Scratch. It kind of depends on the conditions of the case. But, research is such a huge part of what I'm doing here that, yeah, there are many, many cases I look into. And before I was doing this, I was a true crime consumer, just like you guys are. And I had, watched tons of documentaries, even before I was doing the review show, and TV shows and all that kind of stuff. So I already had kind of a good basis of information. Nowadays, because it is my everyday looking into these cases, the last thing I want to do when I, shut down the office and go upstairs for the rest of the day is dive into true crime content. I did watch the Madeleine McCann Netflix series. That's a case we've covered here. It's a case that I have some strong interest in. So I did watch that, but it's pretty rare nowadays that I'll actually kind of take on some new true crime thing in terms of entertainment, because I'm looking at these cases day after day after day, and at kind of a different level. So let's see here. I'm going to jump back over to Super Chat, make sure I'm caught up with everyone. I think I got all of you, and Crystalline I got. Sandy M. Reed, thank you so much. And I think we're pretty close to the end. So let me just do a little bit of a quick tally here. 25, 35, 55, 75, 85, 105, 125, 150, 200, 230, 250, 280, 300. So it's looking right now like probably about $375. Thank you guys so much. So I know that there's a time frame on the Kickstarter. So based on this, 375. So I guess I'll be doing about 170 or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and donate that to the Kickstarter, see if that helps push them over the line. And like I said, if it doesn't for some reason, that will go to the fundraiser for Colin's case. Right now, the Kickstarter has jumped up again. It's at $21.53. So I think there's a good chance that it could happen. We will see here. All right, got just a couple minutes left, and I didn't even show you guys, but I had made a window specifically for chat. There we go. Let's see what you guys are talking about before we sign off. And thank you so much for hanging out with me here today. Really appreciate having you guys there. Really appreciate everyone that has contributed. It looks like we had 500 concurrent users at our peak. We've got about 484 of you out there right now. A big thank you to Irene Vasquez, who enjoys the channel and programs. Diamond Remley, would you ever consider letting subscribers sponsor a case they really care about and bump it up on your list if it's adequately sourced? Kind of a good idea. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. I would definitely consider it. But for them to sponsor the case, I would want it to like go back to the case in some way. So I'll have to think about that one and see how I could make that work, how I could get the sponsorship to actually help people. Amster Damsel sees herself. I see you too. Vincent Bruce, love your channel. Thank you so much, Vincent. Bridget Cooper Wagner. Hey, she's there. Hey, Bridget. Have a good day. Kim Skubik is here. What's up, Kim? Can't wait to hang out with you more at CrimeCon. How many of you guys coming to CrimeCon? Come on, let's go there. Have a good time. Leah Meyer, yes, no, thank you. We can't do this without you guys. Barbara Smith thinks it was an excellent live stream. Thank you so much, Barbara. I know we covered a lot here today. Emma, Paula O, GM, Nutmeg T, Brittany B, who was here since way before the live stream even started. Whoa, Jay Case with a big $50 super chat. Thank you, Jay. So I'm going to have to redo the math on this and make sure that I cut that half right. But I think that definitely pushed us up to about $200 that we're going to be donating to the Kickstarter, which is awesome. Laura, keep up the amazing work. We certainly will. We've got a good team here. We've kind of grown that team over the past year. Great friends, Danielle, Gray, Morph, Christy, of course, big part of the channel. Indigenous Insights. Yes, you do need to go to CrimeCon. You would be so surprised. It's the best networking opportunity that I've bumped into in any of my careers, even previous to this. CrimeCon, Amsterdamsel. It's the name of a conference that is happening in New Orleans this year. Janaea75, thank you for being here. Amazing 80. Yeah, it's going to be reposted as soon as we're done here. So you can watch the replay. You can see whatever you missed before. Hetty thinks sponsoring is a good idea. I do too. I need to figure out the mechanics of it a little bit to make sure that I can get that to work right. Hella UW. Hope I'm saying that right. I listen to you while I drive. Thank you so much. I'm still considering some version of podcast at some point. Maybe I'll take the old brain scratches and start making a podcast out of those. I don't know. Still thinking about that. Victor on Guys, why don't you stay for another hour to get more money? I've got meetings coming up, Victor. I'm meeting with the three men. We got to talk about the next episode coming up. And then outside of that, I've got another meeting later today. There's a lot that goes on the back behind the scenes, behind this screen here. A lot to keep up with all this type of work. Allison Tatman, see you later. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate that. Paige Davis, I'm telling you, CrimeCon will not disappoint. It's a great mix because it is for that true crime fan. It's not quite as deep divey as a cold case conference was, but you'll get the perspective of media that is there. You'll get the perspective of families that are there, that have victims in their families, authors, a large cut of podcasters, and YouTubers are growing. There's going to be more of us there this year. And let's see, Freaky Frida, will you cover a German case once? It's always about the cases. It's never for me necessarily about where they're from. So it's just a matter of finding the right case and then finding enough materials to cover that case. I've been thankful in some of the past cases I've done that were foreign. I've had some helpers that helped with translations. The Magdalena Zuk case is one, obviously. We've done a few cases that the media wasn't always necessarily in English. It does take a bit more work, but it really takes someone stepping up and willing to be that piece, that connection between me and the language barrier, obviously. And some people think I might need that for English sometimes too, and those people might be right. Let's see. Nice chatting with you also. All right, guys, I think we're going to end it here. Oh, Sandy Reed stayed up till 2:10 a.m. Saturday morning. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sandy. Everyone's trying to talk Christy into coming to CrimeCon. I think that would be great. I would love to hang out with Christy there too. All right, everyone, that is the end of today's live stream. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. Thank you for being here with us today. And thank you for everything you guys are doing. I can't do it without you. And even today, we're making a big difference. We're going to hopefully help this documentary push past that finish line and get some more awareness raised for Colin's case, get some more people thinking about what's going on with that, get some more people talking about it. It's a really important one, and I appreciate your guys' help with all that. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the LordanArts channel.